Hey guys, let's take a minute to talk about the USCIS vaccination requirements. Whenever someone applies for a green card in the US through the adjustment of status process, they need to submit a medical examination that was certified by a USCIS civil surgeon. That's just a fancy way of saying it's a doctor's office who has certification with the USCIS to fill out a pretty simple form. That form is Form I-693. You can find it on the USCIS website. And this is the form that a physician is going to need to sign and indicate that you meet all of the USCIS medical examination requirements, which is mostly just the vaccination requirements, along with some other stuff like you're not a drug abuser and you don't have any disqualifying diseases of public health significance, for example, active syphilis or active tuberculosis. These are things that they actually check for during the USCIS medical examination. The big problem that people have had over the last few years is the COVID vaccination, which became required a few years ago. But to many people's pleasure, that vaccination requirement was canceled as soon as Trump became president. So a lot of people became happy, and a lot of the people that previously had a moral or religious objection to vaccinations, all of a sudden were pretty cool with all vaccinations as soon as the COVID vaccine was no longer required. However, there are still some people out there who have a genuine religious or moral objection to vaccinations. I'll give you a quick example. I recently consulted with a couple where the spouse wants to do a marriage-based adjustment of status. And this couple, they have some kids, and she told me that she has a religious objection to getting vaccinated, and that completing the USCIS medical examination was going to be a problem for her. So I explained that, to have a religious objection or a moral objection, you need evidence. And generally speaking, USCIS likes to see that you've objected to vaccines historically, not just like the most recent vaccine. During COVID, people would say, hey, I object to vaccinations, but when you look at their medical history, they've received every single vaccination. They just were unhappy with the COVID vaccine and how quickly it was rushed and the amount of evidence or data behind it or whatever the reason may be. So anyway, I'm speaking with my client who wants to apply for adjustment of status but doesn't want to update all her vaccinations and get boosters. And I ask her, are your kids vaccinated? Because if you have a true religious objection, generally speaking, that objection will extend to your kids. And so anyway, her response was, actually, my kids have never been vaccinated. So now I'm thinking like, okay, well, this might be a case where we can successfully argue and get a waiver for the vaccination requirement. So if you're unable to meet some of the requirements for adjustment of status, you may be deemed inadmissible. For example, if you have criminal history, you might have crime inadmissibility. If you have prior fraud, you may need a waiver because the misrepresentation or fraud makes you inadmissible. If you don't meet all the medical examination requirements, you'll need a waiver for your medical examination because you'll be inadmissible without all those requirements. So the way the procedure works is you would apply for adjustment of status, go to your adjustment of status interview, or wait for USCIS to make a decision on the I-485 application. And at that point, they'll indicate that they believe you're inadmissible because of the medical examination requirement or whatever other grounds of inadmissibility may exist. And then typically, they'll issue a request for evidence and give you 30 days to submit a waiver for that ground of inadmissibility. And I explained this to the client, like, hey, we would have to apply for a waiver. But if that waiver gets denied under Trump, that'll result in a denial of your green card application. They don't just say like, hey, the waiver got denied. You sure you don't want to go and do your vaccines now before we deny your green card? The waiver will get denied, and then the underlying green card application will get denied. And currently, when a green card application gets denied, the applicant is placed into removal proceedings. So in this situation, if she wants to get a waiver, that's her choice. I can help her with that. But I had to explain the risks are extraordinarily high. You can be placed into deportation proceedings. And then something that was pretty straightforward and would have taken like 6 to 12 months to fix your status and get you permanent residence might turn into a several year thing that costs 4 times as much and isn't guaranteed to have a favorable outcome. So after explaining all of this to her, I think her position was, that would be really unfair to my kids. That would be really unfair to my family. I don't think I'm gonna take that risk. I'm just gonna bite the bullet on this one and get all the vaccinations. The important thing for people to realize when they're applying for adjustment of status is if they require a waiver, if they are inadmissible for any reason and USCIS is going to require a waiver, you really need to speak with a lawyer before you submit your adjustment of status application, because that waiver can definitely get denied. And if it gets denied, you're gonna find yourself in deportation proceedings, which might not be something that you expected when you started this process. All right, guys, that's it for today's video. If you yourself need any assistance with any family-based immigration, I focus on marriage-based family petitions, petitions for children, petitions for parents, consular processing if your family members are abroad, and naturalization. If you want to talk about your immigration situation or you need a lawyer who can assist you or guide you along the way, schedule a consultation with me, Puyan Darian. I'm an immigration attorney licensed in New York, practicing nationwide. You can find my information in the video description below, and I'll see you guys next time for another video.